You ever have one of those moments where you realize this whole time you're the only sane person in a neighborhood full of lunatics? That's pretty much how I felt standing on my dock, early one Saturday morning, watching a 6-foot-tall wooden fence rise straight down the middle of our once peaceful lakefront like it was the Berlin Wall. Neighbors gathered in silence, jaws slack, lawn chairs half-folded mid-shock. And me? I was tightening the last bolt, wiped the sweat off my brow, and gave everyone a casual little wave. I knew what they were thinking. What the hell is going on? Well, sit tight. Let me tell you how we got here. 5 years ago, I bought what I thought was my forever home. A cozy 2-story with wraparound porch, nestled in Pine Hollow Estates, a nice, quiet community built around a lake. The real prize, though, wasn't the house. It was the deeded lakefront access. That slice of shared shoreline wasn't just real estate. It was memories waiting to happen. Fishing with my kids, late-night swims with my wife, bonfires with the neighbors. It was heaven. And believe me, I paid a hefty premium for it. But worth it. Every cent. And then came Brenda Sanderson. 6 months ago, Brenda gets elected HOA president. Now, if you've never had the pleasure of dealing with someone like Brenda, count yourself lucky. Picture the love child of Napoleon and a clipboard. She'd barely warmed the seat before cracking down on violations, like our neighbor Steve getting fined $50 because his lawn gnome looked aggressive, or me getting a warning because our wind chime apparently disrupted the soundscape of the community. No joke, she even made my wife get approval to plant petunias. Petunias. But that was just the appetizer. The main course? Brenda's obsession with power and family. Her cousin Tiffany, with an I and a superiority complex the size of Texas, came to visit from Scottsdale. And just like that, Brenda decided the HOA rules? Optional, at least for Tiffany. One random Tuesday, I stroll out to the lake to enjoy my morning coffee and see chaos. Tiffany's turned the shared lakefront into what looked like the set of a reality show. Giant daybeds, massive Bluetooth speakers blasting yacht rock, tiki torches in broad daylight, and 2 workers installing, I kid you not, a private jet ski ramp. I walk over, politely introduce myself, and she doesn't even look up, just waves me off like I'm some unpaid intern. Then she says, Brenda reassigned this portion of the shoreline for my private use. It's being underutilized anyway. Underutilized? Because I wasn't throwing themed soirees every Thursday? I told her, calmly, that this was deeded access, not HOA controlled, and that she couldn't just take it. That's when she pulls out this wrinkled piece of paper and goes, take it up with the board. Turns out, Brenda had drafted something called an easement reassignment, said the board had voted to give her cousin exclusive temporary use. Filed just 3 days prior. The kicker? It was supposedly a unanimous vote. Problem is, 2 board members were out of state that week on a hiking trip. So, unless their votes came via smoke signal from the Rockies, something wasn't adding up. I made a few calls, city planning, county records, and, just as I suspected, the lakefront access was deeded to the property owners. Couldn't be reassigned without written consent from everyone involved. Basically, Brenda's paperwork was as legal as a monopoly deed card. So I brought all of this to the next HOA meeting, hoping reason would prevail. Brenda turned purple. No joke. I thought she might burst a capillary and start shrieking that the HOA had just amended its bylaws to include waterfront control. Then she whips out another document, claiming this rule had passed at a special meeting nobody remembered attending. The whole thing smelled worse than low tide. And Tiffany? She doubled down. More parties. More furniture. Her guests started leaving trash everywhere. One morning, my 8-year-old daughter tried to get to the dock, and Tiffany physically blocked her, said it was private property now. My kid came back crying. That was it. That was my line in the sand. I'm a contract attorney by trade, so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I dug out every document I had, the original deed, the HOA charter, 20 years of meeting minutes. And what I found, a thing of beauty. The access wasn't just deeded, it was irrevocably deeded. Not even the HOA had authority over it. And here's the sweet part. The charter explicitly said that any attempt to modify deeded rights without consent would make the board members personally liable. Oh, Brenda. So I drafted a formal notice, mailed it certified, and emailed it for good measure. Gave them 72 hours to remove everything and restore the shoreline, or I'd pursue legal action. Predictably, Brenda showed up at my door the next morning with Tiffany and some guy who claimed to be a lawyer but looked like he worked part-time at a vape shop. They tried every tactic: threats, bribes, emotional manipulation. Brenda offered to waive my HOA fees for a year. Tiffany said I could borrow the lake on alternating Wednesdays. The lawyer started mumbling about squatters' rights, and I nearly fell over laughing. When I calmly showed them my bar card and the legal documents, they stormed off. Brenda yelled, "You'll regret this." Spoiler, I didn't. 72 hours came and went. Nothing changed. In fact, Tiffany added more stuff. Started building a permanent shade structure. That's when I moved to phase 2. I hired a licensed surveyor, had the lakefront boundaries marked precisely. Turns out, the shoreline was split right down the middle between our properties. Tiffany's compound spilled well into my side. So I did what any self-respecting homeowner would do. I went to Home Depot, bought a truckload of fence panels, and hired a crew. Next morning, 6 a.m. sharp, we start building. Permits in hand, survey markers in place. We laid that fence like it was a military operation, clean lines straight through the beach, over the dock, right into the water. By 7 a.m., Tiffany walked out in her silk robe and sunglasses, coffee mug in hand, and just froze. She watched as her $2,000 lounge chairs were trapped behind fresh cedar panels. The mug hit the ground. Brenda shows up 10 minutes later in a bathrobe and curlers. Half the neighborhood behind her, phones out. She goes ballistic, screaming about property destruction, emotional distress, and, I'm not kidding, identity theft. She calls the cops. They show up, look at my permits, and leave. She calls the city inspector. He shrugs and says, "Looks legal." She calls the mayor. By noon, I think she tried the president. Meanwhile, Tiffany's paradise is falling apart. Half her jet ski ramp, inaccessible. Her fancy speaker system, split right down the middle. That shade structure, useless now, supports on both sides of the fence. Her contractors pack up and leave while she stands there, gaping like a trout. That night's HOA meeting, packed. Standing room only. Brenda hands out flyers calling me a neighborhood terrorist. She demands sanctions, fines, the fence removed. That's when something magical happened. People started speaking up. First was Mr. Walters, retired judge. Calmly explained that Brenda had violated fiduciary duty and exposed the board to lawsuits. Then Mrs. Ramirez. Her roses got ripped out by Brenda's landscaping rules. She presented legal research too. One by one, folks stood up, voiced their grievances. By the time we hit speaker 6, it was over. The room turned on Brenda. Then, and I will never forget this, Tiffany's husband arrives from the airport. Takes one look at the fence, the mess, Tiffany crying, and just sighs. He says, "We're done." Packs everything up, throws it in a U-Haul, and tells Tiffany, "Your cousin got us into this, we're getting out." They left that night. Brenda tried one last Hail Mary, declared an executive order to remove the fence. But the HOA's lawyer, who'd been scribbling notes all evening, stands up and says, "You have no such authority, and if you keep talking, you're going to get this entire board sued." The vote to remove her, unanimous. Turns out, she also misused HOA funds to pay for Tiffany's fake easement. A forensic audit found she'd been skimming from the landscaping budget too. 3 months later, Brenda stood in court. Guilty, embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of office. Probation, community service, and had to pay back every dime. And me? I still have my fence. Still have my dock. And every morning, I sip my coffee, watch the sun rise over that calm lake, and smile, knowing justice, for once, made it to suburbia. But hey, maybe you disagree. Was I too harsh? Did the fence go too far? Or was it exactly what had to be done to stop a power-hungry HOA gone rogue? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Would you have done the same? Or handled it differently? And if you've got a Brenda in your neighborhood, well, maybe it's time to buy some cedar panels.